welcome to Noonzzz. Here, sleep doesn't come from silence, but from a gentle story. You don't have to fall asleep just yet. Just stay a little longer. Everything will feel lighter soon. They say no one but me can reach the lanterns. So when I saw one glowing in a place I had never touched, I knew something was wrong. Either someone had broken the rule or something had remembered me when I was trying so hard to forget. The hill doesn't exist on any map. It rises quietly behind the village, like a question no one wants to answer. It has no name, no path, no marked beginning. You don't reach it. It reaches for you. That's what the old ones used to say, before they stopped speaking of it entirely. I live here. I light the lanterns. I keep the flame alive. I am the memory-keeper. The job wasn't something I chose. It was passed to me or placed upon me. I don't remember when or how, only that I've done it longer than I can count, and no one else ever has or ever will. If the lanterns go out, the memories go with them, and some things should never be forgotten. The villagers don't speak to me. They don't even look me in the eye if we pass in the woods, but each week, without fail, someone leaves a bundle at the edge of the trees, wrapped in wool, tied with cord, never labeled. They leave it. By morning, the memory is gone from them. That's where the lanterns come in. Each one holds a piece of something someone once couldn't carry anymore. A sorrow, a secret, a truth that burned too hot. Sometimes a goodbye that never reached the lips. I seal the memory. I hang it and I keep it lit. I don't ask questions. I don't open the ones meant to stay closed. Until last night. Until the golden one. It wasn't supposed to exist. No one had come that week. No bundles left. No whispers from the wind warning me of anything new. And I hadn't stepped across the eastern boundary in over a year. The forest past that point doesn't welcome even me. But it was there. A single lantern, burning gold, hanging from the highest branch of a dead pine. Not blue like grief. Not silver like love that was lost. Gold like a name remembered after a lifetime of silence. And worse, it was already burning. No flint, no oil, no spark. Number hand had touched it. I felt it before I saw it. A tightness in my chest. Familiar but foreign. Like déjà vu dragged through mud. Like standing on a cliff edge and remembering the fall, but not the landing. The forest quieted. The lanterns around me dimmed, like they, too, were unsure what this new flame meant. I climbed, thought the bark cracked under my boots. Wind caught my coat and tugged it into the branches. The pine groaned under my weight, brittle with age, but somehow the limb held, and the flame waited. I reached it and paused because on the brass frame, beneath soot and tarnish, there was a word, a name. Elias. My name. The forest tilted. I saw her again, not clearly like something half remembered in a dream, but enough. Dark hair falling over one shoulder, a soft expression. She stood beside a stone gate I didn't recognize, holding something small in her hands. A locket, a ring, a key. She looked up straight into me. Then she was gone. The lantern pulsed, not like light, like breath, and I knew. Somehow I had known her, and that I had made her forget. I returned to the cottage with shaking hands. I couldn't write, couldn't think, couldn't light the fire. Flint slipped twice. My fingers moved like they didn't belong to me. It felt like my own body was starting to forget me too. I sat by the hearth, fireless, until night passed. Only one thought repeated in my mind. No one else knows my name. Not the villagers, not the old ones, not the stories buried in the books I no longer read. And yet, the lantern did. So it came from someone who remembers, or someone I made remember. I broke the rule. I went back, before dusk this time, before the forest could warn me away. I brought rope, gloves, my journal tucked under my coat. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again. Just check if it was still there. It was, but it wasn't alone. There was another beside it now, smaller, dimmer, flickering, like it had just learned how to breathe. The two flames hung like twin suns at the end of their lives, one steady, one unsure. I leaned closer, no name on the smaller one, just a symbol, a circle, broken at the bottom. I knew it, but didn't know from where. From a carving, a dream, a scar. I reached out hand again, the pull in my chest. Not pain, not fear, just something deeper than either. Like a wound left untended, too long. The wind moved through the branches above me. Not like leaves rustling, more like tones, humming through stone, ancient, waiting. I turned away before the memory could catch me again. That night, I finally picked up my pen. I wrote for words. They're not done yet. Then beneath that, she knew me by morning. I hadn't slept. A third lantern had appeared. Not gold, not silver, colorless, like glass holding air. As though the memory inside hadn't formed yet, or hadn't decided what shape to take, or who it belonged to. It didn't need me to light it. It needed me to remember. The third lantern hadn't chosen a color yet. It hovered, faint and uncertain, as if testing the weight of its own existence. A clear shell, a hollow promise, swinging gently from a crooked branch near the edge of the eastern pine. I stood beneath it, waiting for what, I wasn't sure. A sound, a sign, a memory, but nothing came. And maybe that was the point. Not every memory is loud. Some slip in like fog, soft, slow, almost tender, but still cold. I didn't reach for it. I'd learned better. The golden one remained above it, glowing with quiet conviction, as if to say, I'm not finished yet. And the second, the mark, one, pulsed in silence beside it. 3 lanterns, none of them mine, and yet, all of them were, back in the cottage. I laid out my journal and sketched the broken circle I had seen. It had appeared once before, etched into the underside of an old drawer in the back room, a drawer I never used. At the time, I thought it was just a carpenter's mistake, but now it felt deliberate, like someone had left it for me to find when I was finally ready to remember, or brave enough. I tore up the floorboards near that corner, half expecting to find something hidden, bones, letters, a name scratched in desperation. But all I found was dust and cold air. No secrets, just echoes. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the symbol wasn't just about memory. It was a gate, or a seal, something kept in or kept out. At dusk, I returned to the lanterns. This time, I brought the old bell. It hadn't rung in years. The clapper rusted still, but I carried it anyway, tied to my belt with a piece of black cord. I didn't know why, only that the last time I rang it, something came, not something I saw, something I remembered. I stood beneath the 3 lanterns, waiting again. The third remained translucent, but it had drawn closer to the others, as if aligning itself, like they were orbiting one another, like planets around a forgotten sun. The silence was deeper than before, not heavy, not threatening, just thick with intent. And then I heard it, footsteps, soft, careful, moving slowly through underbrush behind me. I didn't turn. I'd learned long ago not to chase shadows in the eastern woods. If they want to be seen, they will, so I waited. And the footsteps paused, a breath behind me. Then, a voice not loud, not soft, familiar in tone but not in name. "You lit it," the voice said, "even though it wasn't yours." I turned slowly. The figure wasn't fully formed, more suggestion than body. A man, I thought. Tall, worn coat, eyes too bright for twilight. I said nothing. He stepped closer. The shape blurred round the edges, like steam rising from warm ground. "You don't remember me," he said. It wasn't a question. "I don't remember much of anything anymore," I replied, careful not to meet his eyes too long. "That's the price." He nodded, almost sadly. "You're not supposed to light your own lantern." "I didn't," I said. "It was already burning." That made him pause. His expression shifted, something like recognition, but deeper. "Regret. She made you forget," he murmured. I felt the wind change. "She?" I asked. He looked up toward the golden flame. "She asked me to bring it here. Said you wouldn't come otherwise. Said it had to call to you." "And the others?" I asked, gesturing to the clear one and the marked one. "She didn't know they'd follow." We stood in silence, the branches above swaying like slow-moving arms. "She was never supposed to be part of it," he said quietly. "But she chose to stay, to bury it with you." "Who was she?" I asked again. But he was already fading. "Tell her," he said. "When you remember, tell her it was never her fault." And then he was gone, just mist and memory. I didn't write that night. I didn't sleep. Instead, I watched the clear lantern. And somewhere, just at the edge of sound, I heard a whisper. A name I almost knew. A voice I almost loved. On the third morning, I noticed something wrong, not with the lanterns, but with the people. The baker stood in front of his shop, trying to remember how to tie his apron. His hands moved as if the motion was once familiar, but now foreign. Asterisk. The butcher forgot the name of his daughter's cat. The oldest villager, who had always walked the forest path at dawn, sat still on his porch, eyes blank, as if waiting for someone to remind him how to move. No one said a word, but their silences grew heavier. They were forgetting the wrong things. The lanterns were never meant to take that much. They were created to hold pain, not identity. A farewell, not a foundation. Yet here we were losing pieces that were never offered, and I couldn't pretend it wasn't connected to the third lantern. It had changed again. The clear shell that once floated like an empty breath now shimmered with a faint glow blue at its center, like sorrow trying to be reborn. It pulsed slowly, as if syncing with the heartbeat of the forest itself. I stood beneath it for an hour that day, unable to walk away. There was something in it, something forming, or worse, something awakening. I returned to the cottage and searched the locked drawers. There had always been one I couldn't bring myself to open. The iron key was taped behind the bookshelf, where only my fingers seemed to know where to look. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside the drawer, a tin box, cold, plain, sealed tight with a silver latch. I opened it. There were notes, dozens of them, folded over and over again, like someone was trying to keep their thoughts from unraveling. And tucked between two torn pages was a pendant, circular, silver, etched with the same broken ring symbol I'd seen on the second lantern. But now it wasn't just familiar. It was personal. The moment I touched it, I felt her laughter in my chest. Lyra. The name came before I could stop it. Not a whisper, not a scream, just a fact, settling in like dust that had been there all along. She had stood beside me once, in the clearing near the eastern line. Her hair smelled of pine. Her hands were always cold. She had given me the pendant. I had asked her to take something from me, something heavy, something dangerous, something I had once promised to carry until death. She had said, "You'll hate me for it." I had said, "Not if I forget." I walked to the eastern trees before sundown, not with fear, but with urgency. The longer I waited, the more I felt things slipping, not just from me, but from the world, like threads being tugged loose, one by one, until the whole tapestry unraveled. The forest was colder that night. The branches leaned closer, like listening, and then I saw it, the gate. Not a memory, not a dream, wooden, cracked, covered in moss, flanked by two trees that leaned inward like they were bowing. The same gate from the vision, from her memory, from mine. I stepped closer, and the ground felt softer, almost sponge-like, as though I was walking on memory instead of earth. Each footstep stirred images her eyes, her hand clutching the pendant, my voice saying goodbye like it meant forever. The gate didn't open. It didn't need to. What waited beyond it wasn't something you walked into, it was something you let in. When I turned back, a fourth lantern had appeared. It wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it wasn't clear, it wasn't clear. It was black, but not like darkness from absence. It was black like something sealed, like a scream buried so deep it bent light around it. I didn't approach it. My hand twitched, and the pendant burned cold against my chest. Whatever was inside that lantern, it was mine, and it didn't want to be forgotten. The black lantern didn't flicker. It didn't sway like the others. It simply hung in the still air, absorbing what little light surrounded it. It felt like a void carved into the sky, quiet, total. Watching, I didn't get closer. I didn't need to. The cold from the pendant was enough. It throbbed against my chest like a second heartbeat, one out of sync with mine, and that rhythm, slow, patient, was not unfamiliar. I had felt it before, at the gate, in her arms, in the moment before. I begged her to take it all. The forest had grown utterly silent now. Even the usual hush of wind weaving through leaves had vanished, as if the trees themselves held breath. Behind me, the black lantern remained. Ahead, the gate, still shut, still cracked, still waiting. I took one step forward. The pendant burned. I took another. The air thickened. I reached the gate and touched the wood, expecting cold, expecting rot. But the surface was warm, faintly pulsing, alive. I traced the crack down the middle with one finger, and a memory opened, not like a door, more like a flood. There was screaming, mine, hers. The trees around us were aflame, not with fire, but with light. Lanterns, dozens, maybe hundreds, hovered among the branches. Each one screamed in a different voice. Each one called out a name. Lyra's voice rose above them all. "Don't do it, Elias." "I have to," I said. "You'll lose yourself." I held the pendant in my hand. It was whole then, the circle unbroken. Its surface shimmered with gold, not silver. The center held a single drop of light, trembling like a tear suspended in time. "If I don't," I told her, "they'll come for all of us. There has to be another way." "There isn't." I pressed the pendant to her palm. She tried to pull away, but it clung to her skin, glowing brighter with each second. She wept without sound. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. The light swallowed her, swallowed me, and then silence. I fell backward, gasping. The gate remained unchanged. But I wasn't. I remembered, not everything, but enough. The black lantern held a piece of that night. A memory so strong, so tangled, with magic and sacrifice, it couldn't be stored like the others. It had been sealed, not forgotten, just locked away until I was ready. And now it called to me. I looked back. The other lanterns remained where they were, but the black one had moved closer now, just a few steps behind. I hadn't heard it shift. I hadn't seen it descend, but it wanted me to know it was near. Back at the cottage, I dug out every book I had once avoided. Old records, my journals, pages with pieces torn out, margins scribbled in my own handwriting writing I didn't remember making. One note stood out. When the black flame appears, you must not light it. You must remember it. I sat with that line for hours. What does it mean to remember something that was never meant to be forgotten? And if I truly remembered, what would it change? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't dot. At some point in the early hours, I returned to the lanterns. The black one now hung where the gold one had once been front and center. The gold had moved aside, making room. The forest rearranged itself, as if honoring its return. And then I saw her, Lyra, not as a memory, as herself. She stood just beyond the gate, her form faint, barely held together by moonlight and grief. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I knew why she was there. The seal was breaking, and when it did, what was buried wouldn't just return to me. It would return to the entire village. The day after Lyra appeared, I stayed inside. Not because I was afraid, though maybe I should have been, but because I didn't know what would happen next. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to see it unfold. The black lantern had returned to its place among the others, but I could feel it everywhere. Like its presence had leaked into the walls, the air, the wood beneath my feet. Every object in my cottage looked the same, yet somehow wrong. The kettle was too polished. The books were neatly stacked in ways I didn't remember placing. The floorboards creaked in a rhythm that sounded almost intentional, as if the house was holding its breath for something I hadn't yet remembered. Around noon, I heard a knock. No one knocks in this village. No one ever needs to. But there it was, a soft, deliberate knock on the door. 3 times, evenly spaced. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the handle for several seconds before I opened it. It was the old man from the East Hill, the one who used to forget his own birthday but could name every bird by its song. Only now, he didn't speak. His eyes were glassy, distant, as if he'd walked all this way on borrowed time. In his hands, he held something out to me, a lantern, colorless, .new.unlit. And then he turned and walked away without a word. I stared at the lantern for a long time before bringing it inside. There was no marking, no note, no string or symbol etched into the frame. Just a blank shell of brass and glass, waiting. I didn't light it. I couldn't. There was a strange hum beneath my fingertips when I touched it, like a heartbeat, but not mine. I placed it on the work table near the others and stepped back. The others dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging the arrival of something unnatural. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of the cottage, facing the lanterns. I waited for anything to happen, but nothing did until just before dawn. The new lantern, colorless, cold, began to fill. Not with light, with smoke. A soft grey fog rolled within its glass belly, swirling slowly like a memory trying to take shape. And then, without sound or warning, the smoke formed an image, a face. Not mine, not Lyra's, a child. I blinked, stepped closer, breath shallow. The child's face inside the lantern wasn't fully formed. His eyes flickered, his mouth didn't move, but I knew that face. I'd seen it once, long ago, in a village that no longer existed. My village, before all this, before I became the lantern keeper. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The sound startled even the wind outside. I rushed to the journal, the old one, with half its pages torn out. I flipped through what was left, searching for any mention of a child, and then I saw it. A single line written in hurried script, in ink so faint it was nearly lost. If the boy returns, the seal is broken. The seal. The one I'd made Lyra carry. The one tied to the black lantern. I thought it had to do only with me. But I was wrong. This wasn't just about a memory. It was about a promise, a pact, and now something or someone was waking up because I had begun to remember. I went back outside. The lanterns swayed harder now. Though no wind stirred, they were warning me, or perhaps bracing themselves, because remembering doesn't come without cost. Just before the sun rose, I looked out toward the forest line. The gate was open, for the first time, and in the distance, barely visible against the creeping light of morning, stood the silhouette of a child, waiting. He didn't move. The child stood at the gate, like a question waiting to be asked, his figure too still for someone so young, the mist wrapped around his ankles, barely disturbed by his presence. The air was colder there, as if even time hesitated to pass. I didn't speak. Something told me the moment I acknowledged him, everything would change, but I walked toward him anyway, step by step, until the forest swallowed the cottage behind me. The trees grew silent again, just as they had when the black lantern appeared. I could feel the rhythm of something beneath the earth, not a tremor, not a sound, a pulse, slow, heavy, familiar. The boy didn't flinch when I approached. His eyes were wrong. Too old. They didn't belong on a child's face. I know you, he said softly, though his lips barely moved. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The pendant around my neck warmed, then turned ice cold. The contrast nearly knocked the breath out of me. You remember, he said. Not all of it, but enough. I don't understand, I managed to whisper. You will. He stepped aside, and I saw what had been behind him all along. Not a gate, not really. It was a door, half buried in earth, covered in roots and soot and the slow decay of decades, iron-banded, carved with symbols I'd once known and long forgotten, and in its center, burned into the wood, was the same broken circle, sigil etched onto my pendant. My knees buckled, because suddenly I did remember. The pact had not been made to save a village. It had been made to stop me. The villagers had not asked me to carry their burdens. They had asked me to forget my own, and I had agreed, because I was the one who caused it. The fire, the forgetting, the ceiling, the boy. I knew his name now. It echoed in my ears like a song buried beneath silence. Cael. Not my son, not my brother. Something more complicated, more fractured. A shard of myself, split and locked away to protect the rest. He tilted his head. You wanted peace, he said. So you cut out the part of you that refused it. I didn't know what else to do. That's not true, Kale said. You knew. You just didn't want to carry it. He stepped toward the door and placed his hand on the wood. "I've been waiting," he added. "You told me to." I couldn't breathe. How could I have left a child, my child? My echo, my guilt behind a door I never meant to find again. "You shouldn't be here," I said, voice cracking. "But I am, because the lanterns woke me, because you did." He turned to face me again, his voice softening. "She's coming too." My heart stopped. "Lyra," Cale nodded, but not like before. The forest groaned, branches bent in unnatural angles. The earth quaked without movement. The lanterns overhead flickered in chaotic rhythms. Some brightened, others died out entirely. One by one, their lights pulsed like a heartbeat trying to remember a forgotten rhythm. "She carried the seal," Cale said, "but not all of it. You kept the rest. I didn't know what it would cost. You still don't." He removed his hand from the door. The broken circle sigil flared briefly, as if responding to him, or perhaps to me. "You need to open it," he said. "I can't." "Yes," he said simply, "you can." And then he was gone. No shimmer, number, sound. One moment there, the next only mist, and the echo of breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I stood before the door for what felt like hours. My pendant hummed faintly, and the lanterns behind me, they watched. When I finally touched the door, something within it sighed. A memory slithered up my spine. Lyra in the temple, Cale in my arms, the world burning. A choice that never should have existed. A voice whispering in my mind, "If you forget, they live. If you remember, they return." And still, I had chosen to forget. Because forgetting is easier than grief. Because silence is easier than guilt. But now, the seal was waking, and so were they. No one wakes up and decides to steal someone's life. It happens slower than that. One cut, one compromise, one secret at a time. Before I was the lantern keeper, I was just Eliezer, young man with too much silence in his chest, and a sister who could hear the wind whispering. Her name was Elsie. I never told the villagers she was my sister. Never told anyone why we came to this forest. We lived alone, just outside the southern edge, in a cottage made of blue stone and ivy. She was all I had left, and I swore I would protect her from the thing that destroyed our family. But it followed us, not a person, not a curse, a sickness. It started with her sleep. Dreams so vivid they bled into waking. She'd whisper strange names, words that didn't belong to her, stories of people she'd never met. And then, one day, she didn't wake at all. The healer said it was some kind of memory binding, that her mind had been flooded with someone else's past, that if we didn't act quickly, she'd be lost forever. They said the memories weren't hers, but someone else's pain had made a home in her mind. That was when the elders told me about the ritual, about the lanterns, about the choice. It required someone to take the burden, to house the memories so the afflicted could be free. And it had to be done willingly. But Elsie couldn't choose, so I did. I offered myself in her place. They said it would be temporary, that I would carry the memories for a season, maybe two, until they faded, until her soul came back to herself. But the forest had other rules. The memory I took didn't fade, it rooted, it twisted, it merged with my own. I began to hear voices in my sleep, people I'd never met, faces I couldn't name. But more than that, I began to crave it. The relief in people's eyes when I took their pain, the way they thanked me, trusted me. It felt like penance, until it became something else. I started offering before people asked. I can take that for you, I'd say. A child's nightmare, a mother's grief, a crime someone couldn't live with. I took them all, but with every lantern I lit, I lost something of myself. First my memories of our parents, then the way Elsie laughed, then her voice altogether. I told myself I was saving people, that their peace mattered more than my past. But it was a lie. I was running from the truth that I chose this, that I made the deal before anyone explained the cost, that I lit the first lantern not for charity, but out of desperation, guilt, fear of being alone, and the forest saw that. Weakness, it didn't just let me carry memories, it let me erase them. That was the real secret. With time, I learned to reach deeper past the surface pain, to the roots beneath. I could remove not just what hurt, but why it hurt, who caused it, even who they were. And sometimes, I used that dot to protect myself, to silence someone, to make the story easier. The first time was Lyra. She remembered what happened during one of the early rituals, how I trembled, how I hesitated, how the lantern flared the wrong color. She threatened to tell the others, so I made her forget, not just the moment, but the whole day later. Later I told myself I was being merciful, but mercy doesn't feel like this. Tonight, the chamber was colder than I remembered. The old chair groaned beneath me like it, too, remembered everything I'd done. And then the voice came from the shadows. You didn't just borrow their pain, you rewrote who they were. I turned, Lyra, older, clear-eyed, holding a lantern I had never seen, silver flame, black glass, and in its heart a flicker of red. She stepped closer. You think you've buried your worst act, but the forest remembers, and it's starting to show the others. I swallowed, my hands trembled. What do you want? Her eyes didn't waver. The truth, the one even you won't admit. She set the lantern down. This one, it's not from the village. I frowned. Then where it's from you, Elias? A piece you tried to cast away so deep, even the trees forgot where you buried it. The lantern pulsed. I stepped back because, for the first time since I took up this burden, I was afraid of what I might find in my own memory. The moment I touched the lantern, it screamed, not with sound, but with feeling, raw, guttural, like something buried alive had finally remembered how to claw its way out. I staggered back, but it was too late. The memory pulled me under. I was standing in a field of ash, not metaphorical real ash. The trees had been charred to bone, the ground cracked, heat still pulsing beneath the surface like coals refusing to die. Lyra stood on her knees, sobbing over a boy's burnt satchel. I knew the boy, Thomas. He was 6 when I took his fear. He used to cry at every shadow, flinch at every footstep. His parents begged me to help. He's too afraid to sleep, they said. He says the woods whisper at night. I agreed, but what I didn't tell them was that I'd already started experimenting. I wasn't just taking fear anymore, I was separating it from memory, trying to keep the cause and erase the effect, to control the balance. Thomas was my test. I removed the fear, but I left the memory, and without the fear to anchor it, Thomas became curious, brave, reckless. He walked into the woods at night. That was 3 days before the fire. No one found him, not until the ash cooled, the vision shifted. I saw the marketplace, a woman clutching a broken necklace. Her hands were shaking so violently the beads scattered like seeds across the cobblestone. She was screaming a name, Ruth, Ruth, where's my daughter? I recognized the voice, Mer, and she came to me after Ruth fell from the cliff path. She couldn't stop replaying it, the way her daughter had slipped, the sound of the scream, the way her fingers weren't fast enough. She wanted to forget the moment. I offered to take the guilt, but I took more. I took the memory of Ruth's favorite lullaby, the one Merrin used to hum in the garden, the one Ruth had sung that morning. I didn't mean to, but the memory clung to the guilt like moss to stone, and after that, Merrin stopped singing, stopped speaking altogether. She wandered the village for days, asking who Ruth was. When no one answered, she assumed Ruth was still alive, that she had only forgotten to come home. She never stopped waiting. I broke. I pulled my hand from the lantern, gasping. Lyra didn't speak. She didn't need to. The flame flickered between us, cold, bright, merciless. These were my mistakes, I whispered. But I didn't know the cost. I was trying to help. You used their pain, Lyra said, voice hollow. You carved it out like weeds, but forgot some things have roots. I was trying to save Elsie. Lyra's eyes flared. Then tell me, where is she now? I froze, because I didn't know, not really. She'd vanished after the 5th year. No trace, no memory left behind. Just a lantern cracked, empty, unlit. I told myself she left to escape the forest, but a part of me always feared that I had taken her away too. I stood and paced, my breath fogged in the cold air. There was a moment, I said, more to the walls than to her, before I became the keeper, before the first lantern. A man came to me in the forest. Lyra tilted her head. A man? No, not really a man. Something else, wearing the shape of one. The memory bled into him, half-formed. He had no shadow. His voice echoed wrong, like it was bouncing off 1,000 old bones. He told me I could carry memories, but warned me, you must never take what isn't freely given. And you did, Lyra said. Elsie was dying. There was no time. I thought you knew better than the cost. I nodded, shame rising like bile. He didn't stop me, I said. He watched. He let me. Lyra's voice sharpened. Then maybe he wanted you to. Silence stretched between us. The lantern still pulsed, but its glow was changing. It was expanding, reaching for the others across the chamber. The other lanterns shimmered, blue, silver, gold, crimson. One by one, they began to stir. I backed away. What's happening? Lyra stepped toward the largest lantern in the room, the first one I ever lit. It's remembering, she said. They all are, and they're not just memories anymore. They're wounds. The wind howled through the stone gaps like a warning. We have to stop this. Lyra turned, eyes dark. You can't stop what's already been remembered. You can only face it. That night, the villagers gathered outside the hill. They didn't come with pitchforks. They came with silence. Some stared at the chamber like it was haunted. Others looked at me like they were seeing a ghost. A child stepped forward. She held a lantern, not one I made, hers. It pulsed gently. What's your name? I asked. She looked up. I don't remember. My throat tightened. Lyra knelt beside her. Do you want to? The girl nodded. Lyra turned to me. Then do it. I reached out, and for the first time in years, I gave a memory back. The moment I returned that first memory, a small, trembling lantern flickering with the grief Lyra had buried, something shifted inside me. Not just in my hands, not just in the forest, but in the marrow of who I was. For years, I had only known how to take. I had believed I was keeping the pain safe, sealed in glass and flame. But I had forgotten that even sealed pain continues to breathe, and one day it demands to be heard again. When I placed that memory back into Lyra's hands, she didn't speak. Her fingers hovered over the lantern, as though afraid it might disappear. Then slowly, she touched it. Her eyes fluttered closed. A sharp breath left her lips, and when they opened again, they were wet, but clearer clarity I had not seen in her gaze since we were children. "It was mine," she whispered. "And now, it's still mine." She didn't thank me. She didn't need to. That night, I didn't return to my cottage. I walked instead. I walked until my legs ached and the forest grew thin and brittle, until I reached the outer edge of where memory dares to tread. I held no lantern. I carried no journal, only that pull in my chest, strange echo guiding me somewhere older than the tree, deeper than regret. Because if I had given back one memory, I had to ask myself, what else had I taken that wasn't mine to keep? The answer, of course, was everything. The lanterns greeted me differently the next day, not just the color of their glow, but the way they swayed as I passed, like they sensed the shift in my intent. No longer a warden guarding their flames, I had become, in some hesitant way, their messenger. I returned to the village. No one stopped me. No one met my eye. But on the threshold of one Homer house with red shutters and ivy curling through the roof, there was a small bundle wrapped in cloth. It hadn't been there the day before, and unlike the others, it trembled. I knelt beside it, unwrapped the cords. Inside was a broken toy soldier, one leg missing, one arm scorched, and beside it, a note, barely legible, just 2 words, "Help him." I remembered this home. A boy once lived here, Joran, barely 10. His father had died in a fire that started because of him. He had left a candle burning in the attic, trying to see inside an old chest he wasn't supposed to open. The guilt consumed him. He stopped speaking, wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. His mother came to me. I didn't hesitate. I lit a lantern. He forgot that next day. He smiled again, laughed, ran through the village, chasing wild dogs and dust. And I told myself I had done the right thing. But now, holding the scorched toy, I realized what I'd stolen wasn't just pain. It was responsibility, growth. A scar he had earned the right to bear. I went back into the woods, lit a flame. Waited, and when the lantern flickered open, when it breathed that terrible memory back into light, I wept. Because Joran had deserved to heal with the memory, not in the absence of it. Word spread, not quickly, not publicly, but slowly, like mist curling beneath doors. Bundles began to arrive, again, but this time, not to forget, to remember. People wanted their stories back, even the painful ones, especially those. A child returned a blue ribbon. An old man brought the comb his daughter used to brush his hair before she drowned. One woman placed a mirror at my feet, cracked down the middle. "I want to see my face as it truly was," she said. I didn't sleep for days. I opened lanterns. Each time, I felt something inside me crack. But the strange thing about pain is that once you let it in, it makes space for light, and soon, my steps grew lighter, my hands steadier. The white tree glowed brighter. But not all memories returned quietly. One night, just before dawn, I found a lantern I hadn't crafted. Its flame burned red, and etched across its base were the words, "The first flame." I knew what it meant before I touched it. The first memory I had taken. The deal I had made. Elsie, The fever, the shard, the man with no shadow. Everything I had buried to save her. The memory didn't wait for me to open it. It opened me. I fell to my knees. Wind howled around me, the white tree groaned, and every lantern on its branches dimmed as if holding its breath, and I saw it all. Not just what I had taken, but what I had become. I didn't steal memories out of mercy. I did it because I couldn't bear to feel, because my own pain made me a coward. And every time I helped someone forget, I forgot myself a little more, until there was nothing left but the lanterns, until there was nothing left but flame. When I woke, Lyra was beside me. "You gave it back," she whispered. I nodded. "Now it's your turn." She placed the red lantern in my hand, and I knew not all pain could be undone, but some had to be carried, and for the first time, I was ready to remember all of it. The red lantern pulsed in my hand like a heartbeat I'd long silenced. I sat alone beneath the white tree, surrounded by hundreds of flickering lights, each a memory I had stolen, each a truth someone once tried to bury. But this one was different. This one was mine. I didn't want to open it. For days, I just sat there, watching it. Its light wasn't angry or violent. It burned low, steady, patient, as though it knew I would come around, as though it had waited long enough. And then it happened. One night, the lantern opened on its own, not with force, with mercy. The memory spilled out like mist, wrapping round me until I couldn't see the tree, or the forest, or even my own hands. I was 16 again. Elsie had the fever. No healer could explain it. Her skin burned though the air was cold, her eyes stared blank at the ceiling, and she whispered names that didn't belong to this world. Father was gone, out in the eastern wood, chasing whispers of a power that could cure her. He never returned, and I stood over her bed every night, helpless, until he came. A man draped in shadow, faceless, voiceless, only a presence. He offered me a choice, her life, in exchange for something I would not remember giving. I said yes. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't care. I just wanted her to live, and she did. But from that day forward, I began to forget. Not just that night, but pieces of myself, my laugh, my name, the way my mother's voice sounded. I built the lanterns to preserve what others wished to lose, because I could no longer trust what was mine. But the deal wasn't only mine to carry. The cost had spread across the forest, across the village, across the minds of those who had come to me in pain, because the shadow had taught me how to take, and I had, over and over, until the boundary between mercy and manipulation blurred. When the mist cleared, Lyra stood before me. She didn't speak, just held out her hand, and in it was the pendant I'd seen in the Vizhuna, small silver disc, with a circle broken at the bottom. "Your father wore this," she said softly, "before he vanished. I found it buried beside the roots of the eastern gate. I took it. It pulsed once, and in that moment, I remembered, not just the Shadow Man, but that he was my father, twisted by the forest's magic, consumed by the cost of what he'd tried to cheat. He hadn't disappeared. He had become the very thing that took from me, from all of us. He traded himself to save her," I whispered. Lyra nodded. "And you traded what was left of you." A silence stretched between us, heavy and vast. Then she said the thing I had been most afraid to hear: "We can end it, but not by forgetting." I looked at the tree, at the lanterns, at the forest. Every flame was a breath held too long. Every memory a weight someone had refused to carry. But what if we did? What if we took them all back? We gathered the village, told them everything. No one screamed. No one ran. They just stood, listening. And one by one, they stepped forward to remember. The old man took back the laughter of his dead wife. The child held the memory of the night he almost drowned. And Joran, bless him, touched the toy soldier and whispered, "I still miss him." Each lantern dimmed as its memory returned, and with each one the forest changed. The wind grew warmer, the white tree shed a single petal, and the eastern sky burned gold. We stood beneath the tree, Lyra and I. Only one lantern remained, the red one. Mine. And in the distance, through the thinning trees, a figure approached, wrapped in shadow, but no longer faceless. I recognized the eyes, and this time I did not run. I didn't look away as he stepped into the clearing. The shadows didn't cling to him anymore. They recoiled like something that no longer had a hold. The man who had once stood faceless in the mist was now clear before me. My father. His face was older than I remembered, but not in years, more like he had carried centuries inside him. And yet, there was something else in his eyes. Recognition. "You're not the boy I left," he said. "And you're not the man who left me," I replied. He stopped a few feet away, gaze falling to the red lantern in my hands. "It's still burning," I nodded. "It's the only one that never faded." Silence wrapped around us, thick and pulsing. Then I asked the question I'd feared most. "How did you learn to take memories?" He closed his eyes. "It was never about taking at first," he said. "When your sister was dying, I went into the eastern woods looking for a cure. I'd heard rumors of a tree that grew on memory, a tree that fed on what people left behind. I felt Lyra stir beside me. "You found it," I said. He nodded. "I did. It was small then, sickly, but it whispered, not in words, just promises." His voice cracked. "It said it could save her if I gave up something in return. So I gave it the memory of her dying. Every scream, every fevered hour, every moment of helplessness. In exchange, it gave me power, a branch, still warm with light. It told me to return home and lay it at her bedside." I held my breath. "And it worked?" He nodded. "She woke the next morning, her skin cool, her eyes clear, but something inside me had changed. The tree had marked me. I started seeing things, not visions, opportunities. The pain in people's eyes, it glowed like it could be removed, and I could do it. I didn't understand how, but the more I did it, the easier it became." He looked at me then, and I told myself I was helping, that I was relieving suffering, but I wasn't. I was feeding the tree. Every memory I took, I left at its roots. I thought I was cleansing people, but I was cultivating something darker. I clenched the lantern tighter. "You passed it on to me." "No," he said, "not directly, but the magic chose you, Elias. When I disappeared into the forest, when I became part of it, looked for someone else, someone connected to both pain and memory, and it found you." I looked down at the red lantern. "But I built the system, the rituals, the lies. You made it better," he said softly. "You gave it form. I only fed it." A long silence. Lyra stepped forward, voice steady. "And now?" He looked at the tree, no longer white, but shifting. Roots breaking, the earth bark splitting open, a heart pulsing beneath its surface. "It wants an ending," he said, "but not silence. Understanding." I met his eyes. "Then we give it back. Not just the memories, but the truth. He nodded. Together, we stepped forward. The tree groaned. A hollow opened, shaped like a wound that had been waiting centuries to close. I lifted the red lantern. It felt lighter than it ever had. I turned to my father. "Are you ready?" He placed his hand over mine. "For Elsie, for you, for all of them." We pushed the lantern into the heart of the tree. The pulse inside it slowed, then light. Not fire, not explosion, but a wave. It didn't burn, it revealed. Across the forest, the roots trembled. The ground shook, not in terror, but relief. The tree split, and from inside, 1,000 golden motes spilled like seeds into the sky. And when it was over, he was gone, not torn away, not erased, just finished. The village rebuilt itself, not in walls or roofs, but in remembering. People came to the tree not to forget, but to leave letters, stories, pieces of who they had been. And I became no longer the memory keeper, just a man with his own story. Sometimes I find myself tracing the pendant Lyra gave me, the one with the broken circle. It doesn't glow, it doesn't whisper, but I wear it anyway, not as a reminder of what we lost, but of what we chose to carry. And some nights I light a candle not for myself, but for whoever might still be wandering, because memory isn't a burden, it's the way home.